Hi, Michaela. Thank you so much for coming onto my podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
I was so blown back when I had no idea about you or you in the world, but it's how it all comes to happen. Um, until I had joined this parents forum through Seed of Life. And I was so glad that I found you because I have been devouring your videos and everything right now because when you step into somebody who's like expanding your consciousness, but expanding like your thoughts and your mind. And when I listen to your videos and stuff, I notice that I'm going so slowly. Like I listen to a part and I pause and I thank you for that because I just love that feeling of expansion and really turning over something. And your work is great. So for what I want to start with there is, because people don't really know what an intuitive channel is, would you mind giving my listeners a better idea of what that is?
Okay, so the easy definition is channeling is talking to and through spirit. And I've uncovered this unique ability to actually speak to beings that exist beyond the earth. So I can do this consciously, meaning I can receive a message in my head or somebody or something when I'm consciously awake. But I also have the ability to go into trance. And this is almost like taking my mind completely out of the picture, although it's not completely gone. It has to be there to help me, um, interpret concepts and things that I know. But in a trance channeled experience, spirit is actually stepping in, and they're using your voice and your energy field to relay a message to a collective or a singular being here on the planet. So that's what I do.
I've watched a few videos when you channel, and it's so interesting because I automatic write, and for those it just because I'm not like up on my lexicon, that is a form of channeling,
Oh,
correct or no?
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely. It's just a different way of interpreting the message.
right, that's when I can get it the clearest, and when I write it, it's distinctly not the way I speak, the words I would use, and the thoughts I've ever thought in my life. So it is so interesting having watched stuff with you where you can get a general feel of how you speak and your thoughts and everything like that, and then you go into a channel and it's like on a completely different scope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the first thing that really rocked my world was listening back, because I started this journey not really understanding what channeling was. Like I just never was exposed to that world. It's been a really conventional type of world, and, raised Catholic, and, we just didn't talk about this kind of stuff. And it really took me to listen back to my channeling, because I started to record myself on my iPhone. That blew my mind, because yes, the concepts and the words that are used are things that I wouldn't have ever thought to use, nor were they really in my vocabulary. So there's a subtle difference you can tell in a writing, right, or a channeled transmission that just isn't you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So could you talk about how you came to this channeling, how you came through your awakening and up into this point where, as with me, I know with the automatic writing, I was doing it, and then I was like walking around with this paper, and I like went to my cousin who I knew was very in touch, and I was like, what is this? And who is that on there? And
Mm.
she was like, started laughing. She's like, you're a writer. Like, you didn't think you were going to channel through automatic writing? It was so funny.
Very cool.
But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for me, it was chronic pain, actually. So I had been, it was like right after the birth of my second daughter. I went into some, experience with debilitating hip, back, and leg pain. And, just in that kind of Western medical system, going to doctors and specialists. And I was, taking medications and doing physical therapies and having tests run, and year after year, getting worse and worse. And it was about a 6-year journey for me. And And I was starting to get pretty frustrated because I wasn't getting better. And, I think the universe, when we're ready to awaken or, integrate an aspect of ourselves, will put us in exactly the right place and the right experience to have that awakening. And that's what happened to me. I made a move. My family made a move across town, and I wasn't very happy about this move. I was putting the brakes on because I lived this very cushy life in this neighborhood that I loved. And I was this chronic volunteer mom in the PTA, and I ran, the local Girl Scout troops and the church social group, the whole bit. And found myself across town in this neighborhood where I couldn't make a friend to save my life. And I was 40. I had to take a really hard look at myself in the mirror. But I was exposed in this neighborhood to some things that I had never been exposed to before, like meditation. And I started to research that because I understood that it could help me with my physical pain. And at the time, I had stopped driving because I had so much numbness and pain in my legs. I just felt like as a mom, I wasn't doing the things with my kids that I wanted to do. I wanted to get on the bike with them, right? And take the hike and do all this stuff. And I just was really depressed about that. And so I started to meditate very religiously because I thought, what the heck, it's worth a shot. And fell into meditation really easily. Like, it shocked me. I'd obviously done this in past lives. Now I didn't recognize that right off the bat, but I started to hear things in my meditations. I had beings that were talking to me. I thought my mind was just making it up. And noticed also when I was outside of my meditations, weird things were starting to happen. Like, I was having conversations with people in the grocery store, just acquaintances, like neighbors. And I would hear something really personal in a conversation that was not very personal at all. And so I just went on this quest to understand what was going on with me, because I didn't have anyone in my life who was talking about this. And that quest really led me into channeling and understanding better that I was clairaudient. But the meditation was the awakening to it. And I actually did heal my chronic pain 100%. Got a diagnosis, and I have an abnormality in my hip joint. Might have happened during childbirth. We don't know. And it's still there today. It's not something that's operable, but I have completely changed my life. And I think the meditation and connection to my guides was the impetus for that. I started eating differently. I was meditating every single day, 3 times a day. I was changing my vibration as I was connecting in this way, and found myself about a year and a half later off all medications and in the best health of my life, really. So that was my awakening to channeling, but it really took me through a personal journey to heal my body, to heal my spirit, my mind, my emotions, and came out on the other side a completely different person.
This is really, like, I can relate to this big time. And I feel like there's a bunch of people who are either going to be going through this or have gone through this, is that isolation period that you went
Oh,
through.
yeah.
I was totally game to sign up for the formula that you were living. Like, I was game to be PTA mom. I was game to bring the oranges at the soccer game. I was game to do all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was quickly taken away, not taken away, stopped very early on. Like, I really wasn't even getting my foot in the door before everything with Dominic being so intense and not being able to function in a school setting or around people, and in my own depression. And then it was so funny when we decided to come home, when it got so intense with him, just to take care of him, the bridge to my house went out, and like, we're on the other end of the bridge, and it would take people like half an hour to get to me, where it would take like 2 minutes before. And it was winter, and it was a year, and everything just seemed, and people were, they weren't sure what was going on with us. So what they do is they suck back. Or what was also happening was, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, it's like people don't even see I'm there. And this friend of mine is psychic, and she had said, well, you know, and I had said it in a previous podcast, that they're hiding you. They're hiding you so you can do this work. And I'm like, what work? You know, what is this work? I have enough work.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and you know, it's like you're at the bottom of the barrel, which I'm sure with a chronic pain, like you can't tell me that you weren't like getting depressed in that, or, you know, pissed, or, and
Mm,
like I'm fed up. Like I'm not willing to do this and not be a part of my children's experience.
right. Yeah, I think there's these interesting incubation periods. That's kind of what I call them, where,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of people, and I'll just say, who feel that way going through spiritual awakenings because I talk to them all week long. They're like, I'm so lonely. I'm so alone. And the guys are really quick to come in and say, like, that spiritual passage of loneliness is all about the internal journey. We're like they're cultivating a new relationship with who we are. So there was a point in time in my life where after this move, I really tried so hard to bring my old life back together. I was the PTA mom. I was that brought all the oranges to the soccer game. I ran the whole Girl Scout thing. I was butting up against walls. The PTA moms in the new neighborhood hated me. They just hated me. I mean, the Girl Scout troop was a disaster, and that was the universe redirecting me on a new path. But sometimes we just suffer so much when we're there because we think we're doing something wrong, when in fact, there's something going on that we can't see. And that's a really big vibrational shift and realignment. So now, because I think it's not just once that we go through those times. I think we have spiritual awakenings throughout our life because we're constantly leveling up. So now, and actually, I'm kind of at that crossroads again where I've gone through a period of silence where people have dropped away and I've really been alone. It was funny. I just planned a trip to go visit my daughter, my oldest daughter in Montana. And my youngest daughter was going to come with me and she canceled at the last minute. And I was like, man, this is weird. I'm going by myself. And my oldest daughter had so much to do, she couldn't spend a lot of time with me. And I found myself alone for a whole week in Montana. But it was the best thing ever. It was like exactly what I needed right now to move forward and receive those messages that come in, only when we're by ourselves. So I agree. I think those times are so incredibly potent and purposeful in our
I'm
lives.
with you on that. I right now I feel like I'm going through a period like that too. And because I had already that period of isolation, before I would be scared like winter was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally legitimately winter, not like Game of Thrones. That because I had to be with myself. And now
Mm.
that I've gone through that period, I'm like, time with myself, like, okay, this is like time, and I get to find all these things. And that seems to be happening for me too lately. My meditation practice has changed, and I feel like I'm like leveling up very quickly, and people are falling away as of right now. And it's bringing up feelings for myself, like, okay, is there something, am I doing, and I'm just asking all these questions of me that I have to meditate on, and really meditate about in faith, and figuring out like, what does faith mean to me? And I'm with you
Absolutely.
on that one. Like, I actually really
Yeah.
love being alone.
I think everything happens for us. And yeah, I do look at those times. I mean, they're not comfortable, but I know that when I find myself alone, I'm getting ready to make a huge transition again. That's the pattern that I've seen in my own life and I've actually seen in my clients is
Yeah.
when they find themselves alone, they're getting ready to make a huge shift. So
Yeah.
we're always up leveling.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
I I feel like I'm organizing a room for like a party, but like everybody's outside the doors, and I'm like, you can't come in yet because this room's not organized
It's
yet.
not ready. That's a good way of putting
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And people be like, well, how do you know something is coming? I was like, it's not a question of like, I just know. I can feel it. It's right there. Uh, It's it's just something that's absolute. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't question it. Like, so there's no point in questioning it.
Right.
also too, which I found so interesting in yours, that I've been noticing on my own with this meditations, because I've been chakra cleansing.
Mm.
And um, I always struggled with eating better and taking a better care of myself. But I noticed with this meditation, it's almost like making it very easy to take care of myself more and more because I'm being drawn that way. Did you,
Mm.
did you, did, how did that look for you?
Yeah, so I have a couple different perspectives on that. And that certainly did happen to me. And I didn't, so when I was in the midst of it, I was really kind of this novice. I mean, we're all novices in, spiritual awakening, but until you get through a period of time in your life, you can't really see what's going on until you look back, right? And yeah, so I was meditating, and I say like religiously, like 3 times a day, because I'm this A-type personality. If I'm going to do something, I'm like all in, right? So I had the advantage of being a stay-at-home mom. At that time, I was, had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was just religiously meditating. But I did uncover a lot of interesting information during my awakening that I think was drawn to me like a magnet. And something that was really funny was I moved into this house that had a reverse osmosis filter in the basement. Now I knew nothing about fluoride or how detrimental that was to the pineal gland or these types of connections, but here I arrived in a house where my water was being filtered at the same time I was going through a spiritual awakening. I learned about GMO food during that time in my life and went through my pantry and just, cleared everything out and started eating completely organic. The more I was connecting, meat fell out of my life. No judgment, not right or wrong. I think we all are individual expressions of consciousness that need certain things at certain times. But for me, I just couldn't eat animal products anymore. So yeah, I think our bodies are always responding to how our energy is patterned, and what we are meant to create in the world. And we're always aligning that differently. Again, I think we're shifting constantly and have to reconsider that at times as well. But it's interesting you bring this up, because I'm getting ready. I do these channeled courses, so I'm getting ready to launch my next course in a couple of weeks. It's on physical enlightenment. And I've been on this kind of quiet journey uncovering a lot of things about the physical body lately. And one of the profound downloads that I received was when we are doing things like that, okay, so we're cleansing our chakras, or we're doing some type of meditation practice, or especially when we're activating Kundalini, which is the big focus for this course, we are expanding our auric field, which is that magnet. So we don't have to think about it so much. And this is how we were designed. We're just supposed to be led to the things that make sense or that support us in where we are. And that's the goal with this course, is to teach people how that's relevant and how to implement that in their lives. Because again, we're all unique expressions of consciousness. So if we get so tuned in to what other people say we have to do, right? Even if it's in the spiritual movement, it could take us away from our personal truth and really trusting and believing in what our body signals are telling us, so it's a huge topic, but it definitely happens that way for me.
It's just so
Can
interesting.
we take a break? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I have these in backwards. Hold on. He was like, I do. That's why they keep falling out. Like, it was driving me crazy. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Go ahead.
What was so interesting to me was I just, with every, and not making this about weight loss or health per se, but with every attempt at trying, like, because I've been vegan for 2 months, and, all these attempts at making myself healthier would fall away. And then I'd go with guilt and shame and all of these things. And I would always be like, why am I not drawn to these things that are supposed to be making me healthier? Like, I'm not drawn to them. I'm really
Right.
not, especially pertaining to food. I wasn't drawn to anything. It was like I wasn't even hungry. Just recently I went to London, and I know the food situation there and I is different with regulations and um all these different things. And I've been like really starting in this meditation thing. And I went in there and I was like, all of a sudden I was really hungry. And we would go into these markets where people would just, all they do is grow tomatoes or mushrooms and I'd be like, why am I hungry and want to cook these things? And it's just the pool and the energy, like even to go outside and like oxygenate my body by running or something like that. That was the first time as I'm doing more meditation that I'm pulled to do it. And I keep hearing, this is going to be the easiest change for you ever in doing this. So I found it so interesting that you went through this physical journey with meditation and then it brought you to that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to move on. So how was it then, now that you're meditating and you're noticing these things, did you I know for me, I got hungry and needed to like know knowledge from anything I could, books, people, like my exploration really went out. And for me, I'd tell my husband little things but not tons. It was still pretty quiet and locked up. How did that look for you?
Yeah, I did a lot of this in my closet, especially the channeling part, but I was just drawing information from all over, quantum physics and chemtrails and right, all of this, you just kind of go down that rabbit hole. And what I think that's all about is when we awaken, we expand our perception, every time. So it's kind of like drawing in all these different ideas that we've never considered before. So it's an integral part of the process. And did I share that? I didn't really have anybody who I could share that with. I was married at the time to a really wonderful man who was a corporate CFO. This was quite a deviation from his beliefs, so it wasn't a comfortable awakening for him that I was going through. But what ended up happening was again, not unlike the food, okay, I magnetized people in my life who were starting to mimic my beliefs. So I kind of ended up making this shift into a new group of friends, like a new peer group of the organization that I work with today, that supported all of the new beliefs that I was forming. So that whole vibration, that whole vibrational shift that we make is always taking care of us along the way, even though at times it gets lonely and scary and, we're not sure what's going to exist on the other side of that transition. We're always taken care of. So that's the way it looked for me. However, I do have to say I was in a very conventional neighborhood. So I purposely stayed real quiet. And I think the moms that listen to the podcast will probably get this. You always have this inherent fear for your kids that they're not going to be accepted in the local play group or be invited to the next local birthday party if you're perceived as a little crazy. So I wasn't showing up at the local bake sale talking about, angels and extraterrestrials or chemtrails or fluoride or anything like that. It's simply because I just wanted my kids to be able to live a quote unquote normal life, right? That I was protecting them, from losing.
No, that's a huge thing. I thought when I started this podcast that almost like I would be able to get parents more into speaking, but it ended up working in a different way, as in I'd got more, we'll say quote unquote professional, but I mean like more public, intuitive figures to talk about their childhoods or them raising children and what they saw. That's what I'm getting first. And now I'm getting the parents because I know as a parent, like I did not want to out my kid. The funny thing is my kid outs himself. I mean, both of them, like, and there's no apology about it. It's very interesting. I mean, just going to the park and, he's talking to somebody and just tells them something and you can tell they've been lambasted and he doesn't think twice and he walks away and goes on the swings. And, but you're right. Like, I didn't want to already make something more uncomfortable than it already was. I watch it in these forums on Facebook, and it's just like, I don't know how to ask for help, because who am I going to ask? And
Right.
I can't, I can't really raise this flag, because then it outs him. I don't mind so much outing myself as much as it outs him or her.
Right.
Um, so now that you're going through this, I'm not sure how old your kids are at this point. Do you notice anything with your own children? And
Oh gosh, yes.
would
Yeah.
would you speak some on that?
Yeah. So my oldest is 21, and my youngest is 18. However, this channeling transition for me happened about 10 years ago. So what, they were like 11 and 8. So we've had it's just, it's such a beautiful experience to watch your kids go through spiritual awakenings with you. And I never intended for that to be the case, but nonetheless it happened. And I believe in soul contracts. So one of the most profound understandings that I've come to is that your kids chose you to come along for the ride. So whatever you're going through in your life, they have some greater purpose in that, whether it's to teach you or for you to teach them. And there's some kind of information that we're all exchanging. So what happened to me, and this, I could make this as long or short of a story as we have time for, hiding my chat. So I actually started channeling kind of semi-professionally, I guess. I started channeling for friends, and then friends were referring me to friends, and so it started branching out, and I kept it a secret. So I never told my kids that I did that. However, behind the scenes, they started having their own breaking open to spirit. And my oldest daughter, we went on a field trip actually to the 9/11 memorial. And we were on the bus. The bus dropped us off about 6 blocks out because there's all this traffic. And you have to, like, we were walking in, and I don't know if your listeners have been there, but you have to go through ticketing, and it's kind of like this TSA type of situation where you go through the magnetics, and they pat you down and all this stuff. Well, all the way through the process, walking those 6 blocks and in through the ticketing, my daughter broke open and was seeing spirit in the street.
Oh no.
And it was interesting because you could feel it. It was like walking into a brick wall. The second you get off that bus, because of the events that have happened there, there's just this heaviness, and I felt it, and I could see in her eyes. She felt it, and another girl in the group, obviously very empathic, was feeling it as well. And she saw a woman, a spirit woman, sitting on a curb with her head in her hands, crying. And she went straight to one of the towers and saw a man who was running and had dropped a bunch of file folders. And she got a name, and she knew that they were engaged. And we got in, and you can look up, on the computer, the names of those that passed. And sure enough, this was real. And it's the first time she had ever had that experience. So we literally sat in the courtyard of the 9/11 memorial, and I told her I was a channel. And we were kind of working as a team. She was seeing and I was hearing, and we were comparing notes, and it was crazy. It wasn't a really comfortable experience for her and I, but it was so, so incredibly profound. And then my youngest daughter, funny story. I was at a theater event. My kids are in theater. They're just theater buffs. And, the parents, it was like a parent meeting. We're all there waiting for the kids to come out at the end. And I had this woman walk up to me, and her son was a friend of my daughter's. And she said, we're just so grateful that Alyssa is bringing these beautiful messages in from my father who passed. I was like, excuse me? And she said, yeah, I guess. So he had this, he was in an old folks home, like a retirement home, and he couldn't drive anymore. He had this beautiful Infinity for a red Mustang that they parked right outside his window. And she brought in the story of this red Mustang and the whole thing. And I had no idea this was going on. She was doing it behind my back. The same thing I was doing behind her back, right? So I had to be, put her like, what is that? What is happening? So they went through their own transition. So talk about being alone. I think because they were becoming so aware and awakened and conscious that their old friend groups, their old peer groups were no longer resonating with them. And it wasn't, as a mother, very easy to watch. However, it was so profoundly important because the women that they have become, the young women that they have become, are so much better for it. And they have attracted, not unlike my experience, new peer groups and friend groups who share their beliefs and who are excited about the things that they're talking about. And my oldest daughter does tarot for all of her friends up at college. And, my youngest daughter is this incredible budding medium. They just have amazing, amazing gifts, but they're becoming so incredibly connected spiritually and with other young adults who are having these conversations. And I do feel like they are going to make an impact in this movement towards higher consciousness. I don't know how that's going to work out yet. And I can't force that in them. That's another thing I've found. There are times when they gravitate away from that conversation, or they try things out, or they do things that aren't so spiritually connected. And as a mother, I've concerned about that. But I found that the more I allow them to have their experience, the more those experiences take them back to that connection again, and it strengthens it again, right? So I really love this, I guess this realization of how parenting is a part of spiritual awakening and our spiritual journey, and that's what it's been for me. They've taught me so much more than I think that I've ever been able to teach them in this entire process. So everything works out, it all works out. And I think as parents, because the worst thing is to watch your child suffer, or to feel that they're separate of friends and not having support in the world. It's terrifying. I've laid awake at night, like I know many of the parents that, will gather to this podcast have, and worried about my children. But I found that in that difficult experience, they have become these amazing, amazing women. And these difficulties have made them into that stronger, spiritual archetype that we're all striving for. So it's purposeful, it's all purposeful.
Well, and I think it helps understand boundaries isn't the word, but like you want to test like both sides, because then when you do test the other side, where in the range you feel more comfortable and where it feels right for you.
Right.
You're not going in it blind. So my son was big on this. He just doesn't need nor want tons of friends. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's just everybody, you could see him turning it over in his mind, and he'll try it out and he'll be like, everybody has lots of friends. But then I'll be like, don't you want to go out and do this? He goes, no, they're not my people. I can feel it. But then as an adult, look at yourself. Like how there's something to say for like how many friends now I have, and like the quality and between the quality and the quantity.
Right.
Because really as an adult, I'm really just keeping the quality as close.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's very few.
Yeah. And then, I find the kids too, and to your point earlier, they make note once, either they come in so advanced, or like my kids later in life have a remembrance of who they are, then they're not willing to make excuses for that. And I think that's the difference between, and no judgment. We just have some kids who are more spiritually aware and awakened than others. And they're not willing to be anything different than what they are. And they can be very authentic in that. And where I've noticed it personally is with my family. And that's a very touchy subject, because sometimes we are immersed in families that do not share our spiritual beliefs. But on the other side of their awakenings, my kids are less tolerant of anyone, you know, subtly suggesting that their belief isn't right. You know how that happens in family gatherings. And they've become very adept at dealing with it. So that's been another concern of mine as a parent. You know, this movement that we're in, I think it's gaining speed and it's getting stronger. And there's so many more conscious communities on the planet than there ever were before. But at the same time, a lot of us find ourselves immersed in situations that aren't as conscious. And so we worry for our kids and how they'll handle that, but they know exactly how to, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. And better, sometimes better than us as adults.
Yeah. I feel like I'm always getting questioned or told, my kids are little, they're 6 and 8, um, about not settling in the weirdest, like
Hmm.
this has nothing to do with this presidency. It's just the matter of trying to give an example, when like, they're like, well, if you vote for this person, then that means you're actually giving a vote to that person because they're not. And I was trying to explain that to my son this morning. He was like, why would you not vote for anybody who doesn't feel right in your body? And I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, like that's just as bad. Like, unless somebody feels right, like, don't vote just because somebody says that it's going to give the vote to somebody else. And and you're sitting there and you're
Yeah.
like, oh God, I got to go turn that one over now. Am I settling? Am I settling? And I can't do any change when I'm settling.
Yeah, they're raising the bar, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these kids that are so advanced, a lot of them are old souls on the earth, or they're cosmic souls who've come into the planet. They're here to raise the bar. They're not allowing us to stay in the old pattern of doing things. And they're also very highly telepathic and empathic. So they can see beyond the ramifications of physical. They see the energetic way that things are working, and we can learn a lot from that perspective, really. So I know there's a point in time in the interview where you wanted to talk about the program that we run, but I just want to touch into that because that's been our experience, is that the kids that come to our conscious youth program, they have perspectives that are beyond their years, and they're helping humanity in such a profound way, even though they might not be old enough to really create something that's concrete yet. Their vibration in the way that they believe our planet to work and to be is actually making shifts. So it's very I feel very privileged, I guess, to be able to observe some of that on the planet right
Well, and isn't that really interesting in itself? Because we can sit here and say, like, they can't make something concrete, though. But we have little kids right here who are really, like, for me, putting me through my gamut, right? And throwing me into a different vibration, right? Changing me as a parent, where, let's just give or take, like, I can do something that does make something more concrete, right?
now. Yeah. Well,
Um,
and that's the contract, I think, right? I think
yeah.
the kids have chosen these parents, such as you and me and a variety of other ones, because we're the ones that are shifting the planet to prepare for more, future generations. It's like we can't any longer sustain the educational system that we've created or manifested. We can't any longer sustain the medical institutions the way that they are, and so these children are pushing the envelope within us because we're the ones right now who are able to create the new paradigm. And then they're going to come up and take advantage of that and prepare more of the way for the next group of kids.
Yeah. All right. So now I do want to venture into, could we talk about, so you're part of, it's the seed of life, and then a sub part is the flower of life, correct? Do I have that correct?
Well, the Flower of Life Institute is the kind of umbrella organization. So we're a volunteer organization and we're focused on furthering human consciousness. And we do this in a variety of different areas. So the youth movement is really just kind of one little compartment of that mission, that bigger mission.
And this, so there's two different pieces that I've seen is the Conscious Youth Forum, where you have highly intuitive children. Literally, they get on the computer in like a Zoom meeting per
Mm-hmm.
se, and they can connect with one another and speak about stuff they're going through and meet other people, meet other kids. And then there's another part which I took part of, which blew my mind, was the Conscious Youth Parent Forum. So it's for us parents that have these highly intuitive children, and we need to see another parent because we're all kind of in the closet, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, that experience for me, I feel like I'm out. Obviously, here on my podcast, I'm out. There's like, I feel like very few are out unless you're out publicly or professionally.
Yeah.
Um, and what was so interesting to me was I had no idea I think there was 13 people in that forum,
Mhm.
the range in which these children's abilities were coming through.
Oh my gosh, so amazing, right?
Right. Like
Yeah.
I had no idea that children could see magnetic fields or feel them. And that was what they were struggling with. Or there was just so many different abilities that I didn't realize that we had all these questions. And it was so beautiful because all of us parents would get on, and like the first thing was like, I am so happy that you are here, like all of you.
Yes.
It was the the gratitude, the feeling of gratitude was overwhelming to just
Mhm.
see one another.
Yeah.
So if you would talk more about that, I would love that.
Yeah, so the focus really for all of those programs right now are creating community because that's what we're lacking. And that's what we've been talking about. We're all doing this in the closet, right? We don't want to come out in these conventional communities and things like this. Um, so Ethan Fox is the founder of the organization. I'm the executive director, and we both had this goal to start an alternative school. Well, my having children and going through that difficult period where they awakened and were so different than their peers, it was my desire to at least put something together, really just for like personal reasons, to get
Mm-hmm.
my kids connected with other kids. And it started here as just a local meetup group where we were bringing kids together from the local area and just bringing in different kinds of facilitators, mediums, energy healers, sound healers. We were exposing them to Reiki and, all these different hands-on types of things. But the true benefit was we always left a little social time, and that's what they loved. So we would let them just hang out and share stories, and they just, I think they needed that. But we just ended up getting so much attention from outside of the state that we decided to launch into a remote program. So twice a month, Conscious Youth facilitates a remote call where kids from all over the globe get together, and we do the same thing. We have one call a month where we have some facilitator who's helping them through some type of topic, or we're talking about some topic of interest. And it's not a teaching type of experience. It's more like, let's open the door and have a conversation, because a lot of the kids are already doing the things that our teachers come in to facilitate, but it gives them this open container to actually share their experiences. And I'll tell you before I move on a really cool story about this early on. There was a young girl, I think she was 10, and she could talk to spirit that had passed on, but she wouldn't tell anybody except her mother. Her mom was the only one who knew. And so she sat in these meetings with us for a couple of months, never said a word, never said a peep, just listening and observing. And then by the third meeting, we were talking about mediumship and contacting souls from the other side. This 10-year-old literally took over the meeting. She had spoken with Michael Jackson, who had passed, like, famous people, and was giving us these amazing stories about what she had discussed with them and how these experiences played out. We had a young boy who was connecting with spirit, who drew a picture of his two guides and showed them on screen. His mom was just in tears, So this is the value, is it's not what they're learning. It's about setting the vibration or the energetic space or tone for them to share what they're experiencing. And so that's been an amazing program. And then we always leave one meeting open a month where we don't have a teacher, where Kayla Casey, who is our volunteer and guide, who's a multidimensional teacher, does that as well. She just guides them into whatever we need to discuss this month. And yeah, that's where these amazing stories come up about what these kids are capable of. They can see grids, they can speak light language, they can time travel. Some of them know they're here to create technologies. I mean, it's just really amazing. And that naturally moved into the parent aspect. So we are just starting a regular parent call now, which is needed in the same way, because now we've got parents that are connecting across the globe. And, you know, really, I look at this as we're just starting here the beginnings of the new earth by bringing people together who need that support. And now we're strengthening the bonds, right, with all of these parents around the globe. Another aspect of this is moving towards the school, taking baby steps. We launched a weekend. It's called Weekended Wizardry. It's a weekend day camp here in Michigan where the kids from the remote program can actually come and meet in person. And so we just actually had our second event. So this upcoming summer will be our third annual event. And it's just like the remote program, except we make it really magical. We bring the teachers there in person. We teach them about auras and crystals and, oh my gosh, telepathy and animal communication. We did it on a farm this year where we had animal communication, and the kids just love it. So we're inching our way towards a full school type of situation, but also creating this movement or this community around this topic, which I think is the most valuable part of what the purpose or the mission is of Conscious Youth.
I think it's so important that you, like you said, you leave a lot of it open for open discussion. Because I even noticed that with the parent forum was not that I was struggling, but I noticed every time I got in a pool, like I would get like major hit with a lot of information, and I'd jump out of the pool because it was like almost overwhelming.
Right.
And so this was happening for me. And I remember we were on the parents forum and a mother talking about her child getting in the pool and the water and something with like energy conduction. And I was like, just being in the open discussion, like I got so much information. And I think also too, with the teaching paradigm, like it's going to change.
Yeah.
Like the less of like the teacher talking to the student and more of them, they learn so much more from like the conversation and the exploration of it. And like I say here, like when we tell our own stories, that's when people start to either explore something in themselves or they see it in themselves. And I think it's so cool that open discussion is so like a key part of that for those kids.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important that we're breaking that paradigm of teaching to kids in a very structured way, because these kids that are coming in, I mean, the ones that are even, my kids being older and being awakened, I mean, they, in their later years, really struggled with conventional school. They stuck it out. They started there, I gave them the option. I said, if you're wanting to bow out and do something more alternative, we can do that. They chose to stay in, but it was something that they went through with very open eyes. So it was interesting because they were coming home and telling me about things that they were catching or ways that they were feeling about how they were taught to in that conventional setting. And these kids that are in our program, they don't really, not that they don't need guidance in some, I think kids, they always come in with some kind of guidance that's needed, but the advantage to having that open container is we can raise up the creativity and the gifts of each individual child and make them just as important, right, as everyone else. And that's the goal. I think that's what we're moving to in this paradigm, is expressing and allowing each individual gift to come forward and see that it actually has a place on the earth, right? Instead of navigating into these very restricted types of positions.
I have a question about with your daughters, because it's interesting. They're pretty much going through close to their own awakening stuff,
Yeah.
like right around the teen years. How
Hmm.
did that, did you know, like, did you notice anything about that? Or I know the teen years, I don't have teenagers, but I know that that is got its own energy around it.
Yeah. I mean, no spiritual awakening is easy.
No.
But I think it's meant to be that way because it just really gets to the core of our issues. So yeah, I think going through spiritual awakening as a teenager can be almost that much more intense. However, as a mom, having gone through spiritual awakening, I found that I parented them differently in their teenage years than I probably would have or certainly had before that. Again, no judgment. But what I notice about myself is I really was parenting a lot out of fear. And I was parenting a lot out of like my past upbringing and beliefs, okay, about the world, which when we awaken completely change. And so I went from this mom who was very rigid about making sure that we got, the grades and the homework done and all this other stuff to almost flipping to the other side where I was just letting go, hey, sometimes we fail. We're human. And I think for my kids as teenagers, they look back on that and being around other kids their age appreciate that a little bit more. So they have some different perspectives than most kids their age that they're immersed with because of that. And I think they see, or they've been given a little more freedom, yet at the same time handled that freedom differently because of the process that they were going through. So yeah, I think we all have our spiritual awakening exactly when we're meant to. And I find, my kids, they're obviously very old souls. I mean, we've done a lot of past life
Yeah.
channelings and things like that. And I know the three of us have been together, but they've also had very advanced ancient lives. So it makes sense to me that they would awaken at that time. And some of the messages that the guides bring through, because we all know there are kids that are really struggling on the planet, kids that go through abuse and trauma at a very young age. Um, our divine record always is leading us towards something. So a lot of the children who are more advanced will get their karma out of the way very early, or they'll have very difficult awakenings very early in life because they're here to do something really amazing on the planet. And they know that's a part of being human and having a soul experience, is there's some kind of karma embedded in that. So if you do have a child who struggles at a very young age with something, I look at it that way, that it's typically a clearing of that karma and getting it out of the way at a very young age because they know that their path ahead requires them to focus on something else, right? Or to integrate that story and use it in some really profound way as well.
When I was in the parents forum, I believe Kayla had said something, and it was only one sentence pertaining to that, like about young children clearing out their karma really early because they had bigger things to do. And I
Right.
remember pausing something in my body, and when something is very true,
Mm.
because it creates a certain feeling in my body, like, oh, okay, yes. Um, and then also too, I get almost like a little like movie strip of like who it is a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that just blew my mind wide open, especially with everything that's going on. Like if you're thinking about, the children in Mexico and everything that's going on, all these things with children's rights. I mean, there are coming up, like the children's rights movement is coming. It's not over, it's coming. And it'll be really interesting karma wise. You're
Mm-hmm.
that I was so happy somebody had said that in the forum, because it was a piece that I needed
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Mm.
Well, I want to thank you so much. There's so much more I could ask you and so many rabbit holes, and I hope that you would come back on with me.
Oh,
sometime.
of course. Yeah.
I
Thank
would,
you for having me.
yeah, I love it. um, oh, could you tell my listeners where they could find you?
Yes, MicheilaSheldan.com is my website, but you can also go to AwakenEmpoweredExpo.com, and I send people to that website. It's an expo that we do here in Detroit based on furthering human consciousness, but it has all of the links to all of our other stuff. So if you're looking for conscious youth, or if you're looking for me or Kayla, our YouTube channel has a lot of that information that you can link to right from that site. You can go to Conscious Youth on Facebook. That's another area that you can check out for the parenting forums, as well as the kids meetups and things like that. Seedoflifeschool.com is another great website to check out. That has all of our contacts and information as well.
The YouTube, I have found so many great videos on there.
It's a great channel. Yeah.
It really is. And you know, sometimes you can get in YouTube videos where people say like 10 minutes is the max. And for this stuff, like you can't really put a time limit on it, but like you can't hit it in 10 minutes. And I just was so happy that these videos are like an hour long plus, because I can really almost treat it like a podcast and put it on my car, and I can really sit there and listen and pause, and it's great stuff. It really is.
Yeah. Well, we have a very highly conscious and highly intelligent audience. So, I don't give into that whole you can only do a 10-minute video or the intention span or this or that. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to attract the people that, are there for the message. And it's a really incredible audience that we have. They're very adept and they dive in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Right.
dive in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to speak to you again.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.